Yeah, well, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Did you all have a good party last night? Yeah, sure. It was expensive, so Claris can only afford to have a static camera, so that's why I need to stand here instead of walking around. So I apologize for that, but yeah, what are you going to do? So I just would like to introduce myself. My name is Claus Lavendt. I have been around for some time in the community. I'm from Denmark in Europe, where I have run a company called Datamatics. Yeah, been here before. I don't know what else to say. So let's jump in. This session is about FileMaker Server. But why should we do this just when you can press an install button, right? Well, I think it's nice to know a little bit about what you're doing so you don't send your app with a Titanic, right? Okay, so what's in it for you? Let's just align. This is a basic session. And I'm going to touch on basic technologies that you probably already know about, but it's important to just touch on them and refresh a little bit because they are actually really important, but it's so often that we just take it for given that, yeah, sure, it's working. So we're going to talk about that, and the installation part will focus on Ubuntu instead of Mac and Windows because they are more or less the installation part is press a button. And then we're going to touch on several other stuff as well. I'm also going to show a tool that is up for free. I created to help with installation and managing the server. It's completely free, and you can go and download the afterwards. So that's the idea. So for the agenda, we are going to talk about what is FileMaker Server. More in what does it consist of, the technologies around the server. It will be fast and you probably know these things, but it's a refresher. And we're going to install and deploy FileMaker Server. What does it mean when we say install and deploy? Securing your FileMaker Server is pretty important, of course, and the backup strategy is also very something you need to pay attention to. And finally, we are going to touch just a little bit about security in your solution. Security is really important nowadays, as you know. So what is FileMaker Server? It's a server that runs on Mac, Windows, and Ubuntu. And as I said, we're going to focus on the Ubuntu part when it comes to installation. So just in general, what is FileMaker Server? It is a server that hosts your solution securely. It's giving access to multiple clients, whether it's from desktop clients or WebDirect or the Data API or ODBC or any of the other thing. And then it's a place that will safeguard your data. So that's it. And the basic features of FileMaker Server is really hosting database files. It's where your FileMaker client connects to in order to open your solution. FileMaker WebDirect, where you can access via a web browser. There's web technologies like PHP, XML. Well, PHP is deprecated and it's moving away. XML and REST API is there now. XML is still there. REST API is the newer protocol to exchange data. OData is fairly new, and XDBC, meaning ODBC and JDBC, and backup. That's the main basic features of that. I'm a little bit fast-pacing here because you probably already know this, so it's a refresher, right? So if we're looking into the components of the server, we have as a central part the database engine. The database engine is really where all the magic stuff, the secret sauce of the FileMaker platform happens. It's where the Draco engine sits, if you've heard about that. that does a lot of magic stuff for us. Then there's a process called web publishing engine, or an engine, and that engine serves as a translator between a web server and the database engine. Basically, it's going to translate the information from the database engine language to a web language that can be interpreted by the PHP engine as long as it's still around, the XML and FileMaker WebDirect. It's being served through a web server. So there's some links into the database engine. And we have a new engine called the WIP that serves through the Node.js, which is a kind of web server as well, that speaks JSON language, into REST API and OData. So that's the part. And then we have the native FileMaker clients that is native directly to the database engine. So in roughly overview, this is how the server is structured inside under the hood. Was that too fast, or elaborate more? No, it's good.
Does WIP stand for?
Well, it's just the name. It's something with, I'm actually not sure what the name is. Web integration platform, or I'm not sure. I put in the name there because if you're looking at the processes running, then you'll see, oh, there's something called WIP, and then you can recognize that's the engine. That's why I put it in. All right. So now this is going to be really fast pacing, but I'm just going to refresh on these basic technologies that needs to be in place around the server. And in other words, if you are installing your server and something is not working, make sure that these parts is working, right? So that's really the point of the refresher here. So a network address is basically a computer say, I need to speak with a server. Okay, you need the address. Like if you want to call someone, you need to have the phone number, right? And an IP address could be like the one listed here, and that's IPv4, which only has not so many billion addresses, meaning that with the vast amount of devices we are putting on the internet, we need some more addresses. That's why the IPv6 was formed in I don't remember, but that's a much longer address that has room for pretty much anything you would think of putting on the internet, right? Basic stuff. So DNS, what is the DNS? Well, I cannot remember the phone number. That's why we have a phone book. And the DNS, sorry. So the DNS is the phone book of the internet. And basically it says, okay, I want to visit Claris.com. We are asking a DNS server, that's a phone book, and say, hey, I would like to speak with Claris.com. And then the DNS server replies with the address, meaning the IP address that you should go to. So that's the DNS. The network parts, network ports, is like you have an apartment building, but inside that apartment building there are multiple doors, right? And in the server language, we are talking about ports here. So, for example, FileMaker's native clients communicate via port 5003, and the web stuff is communicating securely via 443, and so on and so on. So that's also a part of the network at that. And in order to get to a firewall and get behind the firewall to one of the machines or servers on the other side, we have something called NAT, the Network Address Translation. And it's just like an apartment building. You could say, you go in and say, I would like to speak with Marie. And then there's a partner saying, okay, then you need to take the elevator and go to the second floor, and that's through that door. So that's the purpose of the NAT. The firewall is pretty important as well. It's our security guard, and it is taking care of making sure that no traffic is allowed through the firewall that we don't want, right? So again, this is the basic technologies, you know about them, but if something is not working, it could be one of these basic elements that is not in place. Maybe there's closed for the ports you need in the firewall. Maybe the net is not set up correctly. Okay. So let's dig more in. Let's install the FileMaker server, right? And you know, Ubuntu is a command line server in general. You can install a desktop on top of it. But when it comes to server, I wouldn't recommend it at all because it just adds extra complexity and unneeded stuff, and then it's also a security attack vector. So, but you all like to type in commands, right? Yeah, we love it. Okay, so I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna show a video just in order to not crash in the middle of this presentation. And the tool I'm going to show you is a tool that you can download for free. So I'm just going to reiterate that. It is available already on our blog site called thebrainbasket.com. It will be in the presentation. I'm going to show the link as well later. So let me just show the video here. All right, so this is the tool. Is it? We should zoom a little bit. We can do that and do that. Is it easier to see now? Okay. So basically, this tool will help you with the commands that is needed in order to install it really easily. So first off, we need to know what version is it you want to install. And it's not only the version, but also the build number. So the most recent one is 20.3.1 and build number 31. This is all something you can see on your download page with your license, right? The Claris installer. And then we need to know which version of Ubuntu do you want to install on. Ubuntu 20 or Ubuntu 22. Pick the latest one, if your server is the latest one, right? And then there's the processor type. Now we need to account for AMD or ARM. Let me see. ARM. Yeah, sorry. The ARM is the processor that type that is in the newer Mac computers, and in some server centers you can also get the same one. All right. So the next thing we need is the FileMaker Server username and password for the installation, and then also a PIN number. And what is the PIN number for? You know that? Yeah, password reset through a command. Okay, so if you forget your password, you can just reset it via a command line command. All right. So what happens now is that after you've filled in this stuff, you press a button and select where to save them. And now we have, let me see, maybe this is, yeah, here you go. Zoom in again. This basically, okay, there is 2 new files. Yeah. There's 2 files inside this one. This one is a shell script. That's actually where all the commands are. And then there's another file that we write out as well that's named assistinstall.txt. That's a feature of FileMaker Server installation where you can put in some different information about how do you want the server configured. So the tool writes out that one as well, and then you need to add your license certificate, okay? Which you can download, of course, along with the software as well. Right, so let's move on here, and just as you can see here, it contains the information about your FileMaker Server console username and password. And what I'm showing here, I hope it's clear enough. Otherwise, well, we can look at the files afterwards. But basically, there's two steps, but I added a third step as well with some basic configuration where you can just take this shell script and just add to it because it's fairly simple. But there are a couple of commands in the start. What is happening next is that we want to install the server, and we do that by downloading the server package directly from the FileMaker, the Claris repository, unpack it, install all the other stuff, and then in part 3, we are just gonna put in some basic configurations that could be a good idea. And then finally, we reboot the server so all the settings gets in place. Okay? Clear enough? Right. So what happens next is that we need to upload this to the server. I'm not going to show you how to set up a server because that's something you need to do with your provider. So we already have a server here in the video. And what I'm doing is I'm going to upload those 3 files to in this case, the directory is Ubuntu. They set up a user, an Ubuntu user. This is an Amazon server. I'm going to make sure that we can execute the installation shell script as well as the assisted install. Sometimes that works automatically, and sometimes you need to change the permissions. So what I'm doing here is I'm running, just going to pause for a moment. I'm gonna, well, as you can see, I'm typing in a command called ls, which basically, well, I don't know why they call them ls or whatever. I just know ls. And that's just in order to say what is actually in my directory, the current directory that I'm looking at. And we have the 3 files that we just uploaded. And then we want to install. So the command for that is also in the tool, but it's basically just saying sudo, meaning run as the owner, complete root of this machine, then a dot and a dash, and then the name of the shell script. So that's what's happening here with that command. And as soon as I do that, it's running the shell script. And yeah, I did speed up something here in the process. But basically, you get a lot of feedback about what is going on here. There were some flashes there, which is more or less feedback saying which type of process do you want to reboot. Just press OK. Okay, because we're gonna finish by rebooting the machine, and then everything is good. So right now, the FileMaker Server part is being installed. First, we are gonna make sure that everything is updated in the commands, and then we are gonna install the FileMaker Server part. And the last thing that is going on at the bottom now is that we are gonna do a little bit of configuration in there with FileMaker command lines. And let me see. Oh, it's done. Cool. So, yeah, because the last thing going on is that now we're rebooting. Okay? That was easy, right? And now you have a FileMaker server up and running. You go into the admin console with the address of your server and just log in and install your SSL certificate, and then you're good to go. Then it's a server like if it was on Mac or Windows or, yeah, okay? And you can treat it like that. So that was simple enough. Is anyone here not having installed a server before? Yeah, a couple. Okay, great. And the other ones are just expert. Great. So let's run through it. Good. Maybe we should take a look at, where is it? That is. Maybe we should take a look at this shell script file. Would you like that? Or you don't care?
Please.
Okay, yes, good. Let me zoom in. So it's basically commands, and these are commands that you just learn them or copy and paste them from somewhere and just type them in without really, you don't need to understand everything. But the first thing we're doing is that we are installing a library. Linux is consisting of a bunch of libraries and apps and so on that you can install by command, and then magically you have some capabilities in place. And when you have installed it, there's a manager that is giving you the ability to update your packages whenever an update is there. Even though you don't know where it's coming from, it's all handled by that. So we are installing a package named unzip, and the reason for that is because we are downloading a compressed server installation file from the Claris download site, right? And then there's a vget, which is a library that is an alternative to curl, as far as I know, in order to download some stuff. This is required for the FileMaker server. And then we have the next command saying, let's update. And updates basically means all the stuff I have on my machine, go and check if I need any updates. And it will do so, and then it will return and say, oh yeah, you need to upgrade 3 packages if you want to, or 10 packages or whatever. And the next thing we do is just saying, yeah, please go ahead, upgrade. Even though upgrade is maybe not upgrades as much as it's updating, but that's another thing. Actually, this looks like a leftover. That's a library, yeah. I have another more extensive version of this shell script. I did a video with Richard Carlson, and that script is also available if you want to have a more complicated one. This is a leftover. I see where it can speak with JSON in the command line. Anyway, right? So we make sure that we are in the install directory. We are using curl to download the server installation package. Then we're going to unzip it, make sure it's in the right place. We're going to move around, and then we're going to remove this. We are going to clean up some stuff here, the zip file we downloaded and so on. So we just have what's needed. And that's the command to install the FileMaker server using the assisted text file where we had the admin console username and password and the PIN number as well, along with a couple of other informations you can put in there, right? So what we're doing here in part 3, that's basically my preferences. So you can fiddle around with that. If you want to learn about the line commands that is available for FileMaker server, it's also in that tool that you can download, where you can find all of them. But basically, we're saying enable client stats, so we have some information about what's going on with the clients, the server stats, and then there's a little calculation saying, okay, we are going to assign a little less than half of the memory available on the server as the database cache. Is that the right size? It all depends on your solution. But it's a starting point, and there's a lot of differences compared, so there's no real golden number here. In order to have that cache size really great, you need to look at the stats and the top call stat in order to see mostly the server stats to see how much cache hit is there. But that's for another session to dig into that. And we're setting the cache size here, and then we're rebooting at the end, right? And most of the commands are with sudo, meaning that I'm the root owner of this machine, so I'm allowed to do everything here. That's it. Okay, fairly simple, right? Let's go back here. All right, so let's talk about some best practice. You should use several disks. That's really a foundation. A server should never run the database files, the container files, and the backup of this and the system off the same disk. Should separate it, and that is fairly easy to do with the hosting that is available today, right? And then another best practice is that you don't automatically open database files. The reason for that is if you're running your server, especially on-premise, if the power is being cut out, then you could crash your FileMaker, your database files if it's trying to get up and running again, and then it's gonna be cut out where the database files is in a state of almost open. And we don't want to smash our database files, right? So backup, and backup is also best practice, of course. Yeah.
On your several disks, virtual disks or actual physically different?
It depends on where you cannot have physical disk in AWS, for example. So
it's an on-prem.
If it's on-prem, I would have separate disks. Well, that's what we're doing.
Okay.
So,
I was talking to Wim yesterday, and he said that ideally you want 4 disks, even on an AWS, like 4 volumes.
yeah, I'm gonna come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. If you have a crash, I've seen this many times. You have a crash where the server, for some reason, is crashing. It could be a power outlet. It could be a system failure. It could be anything. Sometimes it can happen that the database engine simply crashes for some reason, right? Always roll back to a good backup. Always. Because if it has been involved with a crash, there is some damages. Even if FileMaker Server is able to open the files and just don't report anything other than, yeah, we just checked the file and now we're up and running, still have damages there. And the danger is that you're just turning on the server, posting the files again, and just move along. And at some point in time, you'll discover some really bad stuff going on in your solution. And now you don't have a good backup because you have overwritten the backup. So if you have a crash, roll back to the latest good backup. And the latest good backup should be the latest backup, right? Unless other things is done. And then use the security features of the platform. Because there are actually very good features there and very good security. All right. So maybe this is also a refresher with the SSL certificate. You all know about SSL? Yeah, great. All right. Basically, I'd like to put images on what is it, because then I think it's easier to understand, right? So in real life, we say, who are you? And in order to verify that I am who I say I am, we typically have a passport or some other sort of identification that is issued by the trusted source, like typically the government. But I know in some places the government is not the trusted source, but it's supposed to be the trusted source, right? But anyway, that's how we verify that we are actually who we say we are in the physical world for us. And the server is basically the same. We have a server, and we install an SSL certificate in order to verify that, yeah, that server is actually who it says it is. And we are getting the certificate from a trusted source. Those are private companies. I don't know if they are really trusted, but again, it's probably a matter of opinion. So did you notice in the keynote yesterday that they said, let's encrypt this coming? Yeah. That's going to make the SSL part even easier, right? But it is not that complicated today. All right, so the disk is, I'm saying using 3 disks plus the system disk, right? So a disk for database files, a disk for container disk for the container data, and then a backup disk. And on top of that, you should also have some kind of remote backup. No matter if you are using AWS or Google Cloud or on-prem server or whatever. Yeah, I'm going to come back to that. I have an important point. So, have you all been in the admin console? FileMaker admin console? More or less. All right. I'm just going to point out a few things here. On the configuration screen, there's this setting saying automatically open database files. And best practice is to turn that off, right? It's nice and easy, but if the server has a crash, there's two main reasons. One, you could have some damages. 2, you will get notified if the server is rebooting, coming up again, and the files is not open, because your users will say, hey, I cannot get on the system. And then you know, oh, I need to go in and see what happened, right? Look in the log files and maybe or probably roll back to a good backup, right? If you don't have this on, then it could just continue without you noticing anything, right? Yeah.
Do you have another like monitoring client letting you know the crash? Is there any issue with having that turned on?
I would say it really depends on where your server is, right? On-prem is where you're responsible for the power, right? I've seen that this really needs to be on so that you really not only discover it, but also start the replacement to the backup immediately instead of just trying to open. If you have very big files and FileMaker Server needs to verify, it can take a lot of time. And if it has some damages as well, then it can take even longer time. I've seen examples where it took more than an hour to open a file, right? And in the meantime, you have users sitting and say, what's going on? Come on. And calling you, and you're completely stressed out. And the thing is that you cannot stop the process again. If you have said, let me open that file, you cannot say, oh no, please stop. No, I'm in the middle of it. So you cannot stop it again, other than crashing the server, and then you're sure your file are going to be crashed, right? So that's very important. When it comes to power outages in an Amazon data center, that's not likely to happen, right? But of course it can happen. The same with other vendors, server centers. It's not likely because they are trying to make sure that they have backup power and a generator as well. So it's not likely to happen there in the same way. But we have maybe 1 or 2 servers where we have this switch on, but that's for some very specific reasons. Otherwise, it's always off in order to know that. Yeah.
So with the switch off, users would have to log in with their credentials each time they access files. Is that correct?
No, with this off, it means that the server will not open the files and host them, meaning that the users will not be able to connect or log into the solution because it's not ready on the server. Yeah.
Your IT department does some OS level patching and then they reboot the computer. Is that the same scenario as a crash your point of view?
Yeah, well, they should never do that, and that's they should never just issue a patch without you stopping, disconnecting users, stopping the hosting of the database files, and then you can apply a patch. Never do that, especially, well, on Ubuntu it's easier to apply updates because it doesn't need to reboot. Some packages need a reboot of the server and some doesn't. But especially for Windows servers, where typically the IT department has procedures in place, I always tell them to exclude the FileMaker server because you need to shut down the database files. Otherwise, it's just doing a reboot. And in theory, it's supposed to work like the operating system sends a signal to FileMaker server saying, we need to reboot, shut down your process. And then FileMaker server is supposed to disconnect clients, close down the files, and stop its process so the reboot can take place. But in reality, I've seen that really doesn't happen because the operating system gets impatient with the process and just, okay, now we're going to just reboot. And then you can crash the files, which is something we don't want to.
What do you do on the service? Tell it to restart automatically, or you leave it for manual, or?
I leave it for manual. For those updates, we agree on a window. If it's Windows, should be at least once a month that you apply security updates. Right?
In the services, admin services area, you can tell the service whether it should start up again or not.
Yeah, but well, it does start up again if you have these are automatically on. Says automatically start the database engine and the web publishing engine. So meaning that after reboot, it will automatically start up. The only thing that doesn't happen here is that the database files is not being opened and hosted on the server. Because if the process crashes, yeah, that's one thing. But we don't want to put damage on our data, right? Does that answer enough? Okay, thank you. All right, there's another setting here, which is not really security, but it's a good thing to have on. It makes it harder to discover database files. So it has something to do with security, but it's you can get to the files as well. But if you have this setting off and you go into FileMaker Pro and say, let me see what files are on this host. Then if you know the file name, then you can try to see if you can get into that file. And maybe you have some other files left on the server with lesser security or easier to guess passwords, which of course never happens, but in case it does, this setting makes it a little bit harder because you have to know the name of the database file that you want to get into. And that applies both in FileMaker Pro and in the other like data API as well, OData and so on. Right. So this configuration screen is where you set up the 3 disks or the 3 disks. Additional database folder. There will always be a database folder on the system disk where FileMaker Server is installed. But when you upload database files, never ever use that one. Unfortunately, you cannot turn it off. So it's an additional folder here, and I'm not going to go deep into the Ubuntu part about how to add another volume or a disk and set it up so it's working. You can watch the other movie I did with the shell script that has some commands that can help setting that up. But basically, you just type in the address, and this is file Linux, and you type in the address to where the data is stored on that disk, and that's it. And file Linux is a prefix if it is a Linux server. File Mac or file Win is the prefix for the other ones, right? So the schedules, the script schedules, for example, I've set up actually These are not script schedules. These are system schedules. There's one schedule that's already included that will purge the temporary database files. When FileMaker Server is running, it is building up some temporary cache files, you could say, in order to serve faster when it discover which part of your database files are mostly used. And it is a good idea to clear that once in a while, maybe once a week, sometimes once a day if you have something where you feel something is clogging up. Again, there's no real hard, you have to do it at these frequencies. But one thing to notice here is that the scheduled time is all different. And whenever you set up schedules, both backup schedules and the script schedules, try to make them run in different times. If everything runs at the same time, the server is gonna use the energy for those schedules and forget to serve the clients, meaning that your clients that are using the system will experience, oh man, it's slow now, right? Yeah, that's because all the resources is used by other processes on the server. Right. Yeah.
I've seen the verify all DB. What happens if it doesn't transfer? Do you get a notification?
Actually, thank you very much for pointing that out. Because the verify all database files is a system script that is doing a verification. You can do that manually as well on files. But if you have that schedule, I have that schedule running every day of office hour. What it does is that it's disconnecting the clients, it is closing the file, do a verification, and then open the file if the verification is succeeded, right? If it fails, the file will not open. And if you have the notification email set up, then you will receive an email saying, the file is not open. Then you need to figure out why is it not open. I had a very bad experience last year, I think. And I've been doing FileMaker development for 30 years now. It's the first time I experienced it. Just to, it's not something that happens all the time. But what did happen was that I had a file where I didn't have this verify database on. And at some point in time, something happened to the security scheme. So where the accounts and privileges is stored inside the file, it had some damages. Since it was open on the server, everything worked. But as soon as it closed down and the server tried to open it again, it was not possible. And I could not get into that file at all. And that's a security feature, which is good, but it's really bad, right? And then, go back to the last backup, right? Oh no, that was the same. And because I hadn't noticed, I had no clue because it was just running on the server. The only resort I had was to call Claris and ask them for help. They have a special tool inside where they can unlock or get you out of the situation so you can get your data out. But of course you need a good file to put it into, right? So that was a nerve-wracking couple of hours, a day, because we had users that were supposed to use that system. So it's not like everyone needs to use the things we're doing, right? So this one is now always standard. So I get a message every day, so the last backup would be okay, right? So it's easier to roll back in order to get that. So I encourage you to set that up on your server in order to know if something bad really happens, right? Yeah.
Users notice that you've closed them out?
No, because I do it off hours. So typically where people are sleeping or not in the office,
They
or
don't hang out with their FileMaker open completely overnight.
yeah, no, well, of course, if they have it
That's
open,
different
right?
user.
It's some people leave their laptops or whatever open with their FileMaker system, and sure, they need to log in again. No one has complained about that because I don't think they even realize what's going on. But it's just something you have to live with, as with so many other things in life, right? So, and it is for security. It's for a very good reason. It's not to annoy anyone. But sure, they are going to be kicked out.
What happens if somebody clicks in the field and goes home? I'd still turn it off.
I have seen the verification fail, and that's most likely because FileMaker is not able to kick out the user properly and close the file down. But the next day, it's verifying perfectly fine. Normally, you will be disconnected even if you're in the field, so you have a record logging going on, right? But normally, you will be just kicked out and everything is good. Then whatever you have in your session that is not committed, then that's of course lost, right? But if you start typing in a novel and you never commit, then yeah, that's lost, right? But other than that, normally it will kick the user out and close the file.
Do you have any recommendations on like frequency to backup?
Excuse me?
You have recommendations in here on the frequency you should create a backup?
Yes, I'm gonna get back to the backup. And I'm gonna run, yes.
So the file, well, our users are on 24-hour treatment.
Mhm.
And they're using it literally 24 hours. So
Yep.
I guess I would just have to arrange to say from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning, use paper or something.
Well, normally it doesn't take that long, but you will have
It's a
to do
big
it.
file.
Huh?
It's a pretty big file.
Still, normally, well, we have a very big system with several very big files, so like 16,
Wait a minute, are you
20
just
gigabytes.
verifying and you're not backing up?
That part is not backing up. It's only verifying.
It's only verifying.
It's only verifying.
So that wouldn't
Yeah.
take that long.
Normally it wouldn't, but again, it also depends on how much have you put in, right? It's like if you have a very big room and you have just stuffed a lot of stuff in there. If you need to check if everything is okay, that takes some time, right? The same with the file. You have a lot of crap going on, or that can take some time, right? And if there's a lot of dependencies all over the place, it could take some time. But make a test, right? Maybe you have a copy of the file you can put on the server and do a test, right? Yeah.
The question again, touch base on secondary server or standby server by any chance today?
Secondary server
Yeah.
is not a feature that is available in FileMaker.
I'm actually looking in the deployment guide for 2020 and it's talking about secondary machine.
Yeah. Okay. So what they are talking about there is the web direct.
Just for
Worker
web
machine.
direct. We will
Yeah,
not host the database.
It's only for web direct, where you can install like 5. So it's in order to serve more clients. So you can install the web publishing engine. Really is what you're installing on another machine, and then there's a load balancer saying which of these workers should take care of that. But you still have only a single database engine.
Do you have any recommendation for third-party software for database sync? Or like on-premise and the cloud syncable for database in case of TR disaster recovery?
Yeah. There's not that. To my knowledge, there's only a product from 360 Works that you can use at the
Gotcha.
moment, or you can roll your own, depending on your use case, of course. There's no such thing as synchronization is not a word.
So it's not a native function of FileMaker. Always
is
has to be
not.
done through it.
At this time, unfortunately not.
Okay.
There has been a feature called failover server, but that was deprecated, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
But at this time, no.
Gotcha.
I did stress that out at this time, right? All right, so in this part, this is where you do the SSL. I previously also built a tool and told how to do it without the admin console, but now the admin console has finally been fixed, so that you can properly create the CSR, the certificate signing request, in the dialog here, create the files that is needed. And one thing you should never ever do is the server key. Don't ever get that away from the server. It needs to be on the server. It's the secret stuff in order to keep it safe. Keep it on the server. And when you do the import, you don't need to, even though you can point out that file, the server key file, you don't need to, because it's already on the server. Right? So, moving on. Just to stress out, there's several features. There's the web publishing engine, the web direct, there's the data API, the plugins, the ODBC, JDBC, and OData. A good recommendation is only enable those parts that you really need. Two reasons. One, if you open up, then you have another attack vector that you need to take into consideration. The other thing is that now you're starting up a process that is taking energy from your machine, which then cannot be used for the primary use, right? All right. So a little bit about, we are running out of time, so I'm just going to run through a little bit here. The backup strategy. As I said, there's locally attached storage. That's the backup disk on the server for fast recovery. And then you should have a remote storage for disaster recovery. So that is if something really goes bad, right? And the remote part, I will encourage you to look into immutable backup. It's a big topic, so I'm not going to cover it here. But basically, it means that a feature of some of the cloud vendors, like Amazon has on S3, you can set up immutable, meaning that you can write the file once and you can read it again, but you can never write it again, overwrite it again. Meaning that if some hacker goes in and wants to do a ransomware attack, they cannot overwrite your backup file. So they cannot encrypt it, because when you encrypt the file, you overwrite it, right? And we had a client who just December 22nd, he found out that they were hit by a ransomware attack. So his Christmas went into trying to recover from that. And that was really bad, and he hadn't immutable backups, so he was really, really in trouble. But immutable backup is a place where you can place the backups, and if something goes really, really bad, like a ransomware attack, there's a good chance that you can recover your files there. When ransomware attack goes on, it's typically they get into the server and you don't notice, and then they're going to figure out, oh, there's the backup. Let's encrypt the backup and go on for a couple of months or 3 maybe. And then, okay, now we have encrypted all your backup. Let's put in the main attack and encrypt your live files. And then your system is locked, right? The first thing you want to do when you get hit by something like that is, oh, let me get to the backup. Oh no, that's encrypted. Oh. And then you discover all my backup is encrypted. And then you're really something bad, right? All right, so that's really important. So what I would recommend is that you have backup data hourly without verification on. Just do the backup. And again, it also depends on where is your server. Do you have fast drives like the hosted ones, Amazon? Then just go for the hourly one. And what do we need that backup for? Well, have you ever had a user calling me, oh man, I totally by accident deleted a record, right? Or I changed something where you need to grab out a record or 2 or 10 and restore that. It's nice that we can restore from last hour, right? Instead of last night or yesterday, right? So that's for the hourly backup. Backup for data and logic daily, and that the logic here is the database file without any data in it. So that's the logic. And now we have the clone only feature as well. So where what we do is we have, of course, a development server and a production server. And on the development server, we have a schedule that very frequently create a clone-only backup of the logic. We don't care about the data here, but the database file itself without any data. And that one is pretty small, so we can afford to have it running every 15 minutes. It's pretty fast, and it doesn't take up much space. Then we have the logic. In case of an emergency, we can take that clone and put the data in, and then we have a good copy as well running. That's the preferred way of restoring. Take a clone without any data in, and then grab the data from your file that was crashed and put it in using the migrator tool or any of the other tools that is available here. And then we also have a weekly backup going back, like maybe 4 or 8 weeks, depending on the size and the space we have ready. And the reason for that is sometimes you get requests from users. Oh, I know that record was there at some point in time, but I don't know when. And then you can dig back, and sometimes it's more than a week ago. So it's nice to have it longer back, right?
How many daily copies?
Sure.
The daily is how many copies back do you keep?
Well, typically it's 7 days, but again, it depends on how much disk space do you have. And when I say how much disk space do you have, it's basically whatever you need, right? But it comes with the cost with the cloud providers. So you need to balance how much backup do you need, really. You need to back up and back up and back up, right? But how much is really, really needed compared to what is the price tag, right? It's the same with it. It's an insurance. So you can also have insurance that covers everything. Well, that's really expensive. And then you need to balance, is that really needed in this case, right? So typically it has been 7 days, what I've been using, and then 8 copies for weekly. So that's 8 weeks back for those. And then for the hourly data that, depends again on the solution and the customer. Is it an 8 days operation or not? Sorry, are we out of time here? Okay, so I have to crash over here just a minute because I just want to emphasize a few small things here. The solution security is crucial. We can secure the server, SSL certificate, firewall, and everything. That's fine. But the weak point is where users have their credentials. So strong credentials should really be enforced. And I'm stressing this out. It's probably something you already know, and you're, of course, already doing it, but I'm just stressing it out again. Policies are important. What happens if someone loses their password, or are you allowed to use the same password for everything, or how often do you need to choose another password if you're using the built-in accounts? Or you could consider external authentication with Microsoft or whatever, some Active Directory, and that's some places it's already given. But just to give you an illustration here, this chart is showing in 2020. So what really matters when it comes to choosing a password? A short one that is really complicated with a lot of special characters? No, it's instantly being able to be cracked, right? The longer, the better. And of course, something that consists of everything is just, of course, the most secure, but that's 18 characters, right? So the longer the better. We typically use a sentence or some words that is put together. Now, I'm from Denmark, so it's both Danish and English words, and something that doesn't, and sometimes it could be like grandma pancakes, awesome, or 79 awesome dash, or whatever, right? So something where you as a user can learn that sentence saying, oh yeah, that's the sentence. It doesn't make sense for me because my grandma made great pancakes or whatever, right? But the longer the better, right? And now see what happens from 2020 to 23, just in 3 years. Notice how little green is left just in 3 years, right? So it's just emphasizing that, hey, it's really important with strong passwords. All right, so that actually concludes this session.